I'll show you the difference between a good fuel sensor and a bad fuel sensor. This is a high pressure sensor for the fuel rail on an A4 Audi. A lot of fuel sensors work in the same way. A lot of systems like this car have a low pressure fuel pump underneath the seat and then a high fuel pressure pump at the engine. To measure high fuel pressure, you have to use like a scan tool utilizing a sensor like this. You can't use a gauge like this. It's not really possible to read the high pressure on a gauge like this because the pressures go up so high. Here's a typical gauge that'll go up to 16 bar, but this car will easily go up to 150 bar, which is way bigger than this gauge. Here's another typical gauge for PSI and KPA. This gauge will go up to 230 PSI, but like I said, this car will go up to 2,000 PSI. You can hook up a gauge on the low pressure side, but not the high pressure side. You have to depend upon the sensor. This sensor goes down in here onto the fuel rail. Once the fuel rail is pressurized, it goes into the injectors. It'll spray the fuel into the cylinders at about 1,500 PSI. If your car is only getting, let's say, 6 bar or 43 PSI, you might say, oh wow, it must be the high pressure fuel pump. The way the system works is you get a fuel pressure reading from the sensor, which tells the computer how much or when to turn on the fuel pump. Then the computer will take like 12 volts and put it up to the solenoid on the fuel pump. If you want to know if your fuel pump is the problem, you can take and just put 12 volts onto the solenoid, and if your pressures rise immediately, then you know it's probably not your fuel pump. With the car off, I'll hook up to the solenoid and connect it to 12 volts. I'll connect jumper wires right up to the 2 terminals on the solenoid. I'll connect one wire up to the negative, and when I touch the positive, you're going to hear the solenoid click. When the solenoid clicks in, then the high fuel pressure gauge will kick in high fuel pressure. If you bypass the computer like this, and your pressures go from 6 bar to 150 bar, well, you know that your pump is probably good. The high fuel pressure sensor might be lying to the computer because it's wore out. It won't be able to give the signal to turn on the high fuel pressure pump. I'll show you the ohms readings on a brand new high pressure fuel sensor. I'll also show you the ohms on the bad fuel sensor. Here I've got the old bad fuel sensor hooked up, and you can see that it's reading 2.4 K ohms. Now this was the reading of this sensor last night, and in the morning the temperature changed, so you can see it's now 6.5 K ohms. You can see as the temperature changes, the ohms will change even in the room temperature. If I test between these 2 terminals on a brand new switch, you can see that I'm getting 0.55 mega ohms. Or between the 2 front terminals, I'm getting 5.0 mega ohms. On the bad sensor, I'm getting an open reading on these 2 combinations, but when I go from side to side, I am getting an ohms reading, but it's in K ohms, not mega ohms. So yes, it is possible that your fuel sensor can stop your fuel pump from working. I'll go ahead and place this fuel sensor, the new one, back into the car, and we'll see if the fuel pump works. Sometimes it can be a bit tight. This is a 1 1/16 inch socket, very thick because it's high impact. Of course, it'd be nice if I had a very thin socket because it's so tight. I don't want to strip the threads on this, so I'm going to use this rubber hose to insert it and then tighten it up with the socket. I'll tape the sensor on with some masking tape. To get it a little bit of room, I move the dipstick out of the way. I'll insert the sensor and then spin it in. You can see access is pretty tight. It's extremely important not to damage the threads, of course. When you remove a sensor like this, you could have like 2,000 PSI in here, so you'll want to release that pressure slow. I'll remove that piece of masking tape. I'll get that big socket in there so I can tighten it up. It's tight, and that's why I don't want to strip anything. You can see that socket just fits on there. So we'll just give it a little bit of a snug, make sure it's tight. Now we can put our connectors back into place. To remove the connector, you have to tip this little section here and push the connector in until it clips. Plug the alternator back in. It clips and unclips in the same fashion. Connect the fuel pump connector. We'll turn it on and see what we got. Back on the road. After replacing the fuel sensor, I can now tell that the fuel pump is now engaging. We still need to make some adjustments, but we're on the right path.